The Wishing Crow. Part 1. The Mysterious Crow. Lena was a pickpocket, and she was good at it. She had to be, or else life in the city's shadowy streets would be even harder. She wasn't proud of her work, but she had learned that surviving in the city meant doing whatever it took to stay alive. That's why she was always on the lookout, her eyes sharp, her senses ready for any easy target who might cross her path. One chilly evening, Lena's eyes spotted something interesting. It wasn't a wealthy businessman or a distracted tourist, though. Instead, it was an old, scruffy man hunched over near the entrance of a narrow alleyway. The man's clothes were ragged, and he looked a bit lost. But what caught Lena's attention wasn't the man himself. It was the strange, dark shape on his shoulder. A crow. A crow that sat perfectly still, staring right at her. Now, Lena had seen plenty of strange things in the city, but she had never seen a crow act like this. Most birds would be flying around, pecking for food, or calling in noisy groups. But this one was different. Its feathers were a deep, dark black that seemed to absorb all the light around it. Its eyes were cold, unblinking, and somehow knowing. Lena felt a shiver run down her spine, but she pushed it aside. She had learned to ignore strange feelings like that. Instead, she focused on the man. Maybe he had something valuable on him. And even if he didn't, he looked so out of place in this part of town that she couldn't help but be curious. She took a deep breath and began to approach him, keeping her steps light and her movements quiet. She had practiced this walk many times. She would get close, make her move, and be gone before anyone knew she was even there. But just as she got close enough to reach into his pocket, the man turned around. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. Lena froze, startled. But before she could react, the man shoved something into her hands. "Take it," he whispered, his voice shaky and full of panic. "Take it and go. You must leave now, before it's too late." Lena looked down at what he had given her. It was a small, rough-looking wooden box. She could feel a strange weight inside it, and she noticed a strange symbol carved on the lid. A symbol she didn't recognize. Before she could say anything, the man hurried past her and disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with the strange box. Lena stood there, confused, her heart racing. The city streets were quiet, and the crow was still watching her. Slowly, she opened the box. Inside, nestled in a small pile of cloth, was a small black feather. But this wasn't just any feather. It had an odd, almost magical glow to it, and it looked just like the feathers of the crow that had been on the man's shoulder. Lena felt an urge, a strange pull to pick up the feather. The moment her fingers touched it, a voice echoed in her mind. "Make a wish." She pulled her hand back, startled. The voice was low and rough, like the sound of a distant storm. She looked around, but no one was there. The only one watching her was the crow, still perched on the rooftop above, still staring at her with those intense, unblinking eyes. Lena felt her heart pounding. She was scared, but she was also curious. After all, what harm could one little wish do? She thought for a moment, and then, almost without realizing it, she whispered, "I wish I had enough money to buy myself a good meal." A strange feeling filled her, like a cold wind sweeping through her bones. The crow above her gave a soft caw, almost as if it were laughing. Lena's hand trembled, but she pushed the feeling aside. She decided it was just her nerves. As she began to walk back to her small, cramped room in the city's poorest neighborhood, she noticed something strange. She hadn't taken more than a few steps before she spotted something shiny on the ground. Coins, silver coins, just lying there, as if they had been waiting for her. Lena looked around, her heart racing. She bent down and picked them up, counting them quickly. It was enough for a meal and even a bit extra. A smile spread across her face. For once, luck was on her side. But that night, as she lay in bed, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the crow, the feather, and the strange voice she had heard. Her mind spun with questions. What was that crow? Why had the man given her the feather? And what would happen if she made another wish? In the days that followed, Lena couldn't resist. She made more wishes, each one bringing her small rewards. A nice piece of jewelry, some money, even a warm coat for the winter. But each time, she noticed something odd. People around her seemed to be having bad luck. A shopkeeper's business went down, her neighbor got sick, a friend lost his job. It was as if her wishes came at a cost. Each good thing that happened to her seemed to bring trouble to someone else. One evening, Lena found herself back on the same street where she had first seen the old man. She held the feather tightly, her mind filled with worry and doubt. Just as she was about to throw it away, a voice behind her spoke. Planning to get rid of that? The voice asked, smooth and confident. Lena turned around to see a man leaning casually against a wall. He was dressed well, but not too well, and there was something about him that seemed dangerous, but also oddly charming. He had a sly smile on his face, and his eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint. "Who are you?" Lena asked, clutching the feather even tighter. The man chuckled. "Let's just say I know a thing or two about curses and wishes. That crow of yours isn't as innocent as it seems." He took a step closer, his eyes on the feather in her hand. "And I know how to break the curse. If you're willing to work with me." Lena hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. She didn't trust the stranger, but something in his eyes told her he understood the danger she was in. And besides, she was running out of options. The curse was real, and if she didn't do something soon, she might end up hurting more people. Finally, she nodded. "Fine. I'll work with you." The man's smile widened. "Good choice," he said. "My name's Felix, and together we're gonna break this curse, or die trying." With that, Lena and her new ally disappeared into the night, unaware of the challenges and dark secrets that awaited them. Part 2. The Crow's Bargain. Lena followed Felix through a maze of narrow, winding alleyways. Shadows hung thick, and every step felt like a journey deeper into the unknown. She held the feather tightly, feeling its strange energy buzz in her hand, unsure if she could trust the man guiding her. But Lena had no other choice. The crow's curse had become too real, and she knew she needed help. So, Lena began, trying to break the silence. "How exactly do you know about this, Crow?" Felix glanced over his shoulder with a small smirk. "You're not the first person to pick up that feather," he replied. "It's been around for a long time, passing from hand to hand. I've crossed paths with it before. Let's just say it has a way of attracting trouble." Lena narrowed her eyes. "And what does the crow get from all this?" "Good question," Felix replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The crow's cursed. It grants wishes, sure, but at a terrible price. Each wish you make isn't just a wish, it's a transaction. It takes a little more each time, drawing its power from your life or the lives of those around you." Lena's stomach tightened. She thought of the shopkeeper who'd lost his business, the friend who had fallen sick, and the neighbor out of work. She had suspected her wishes might be causing harm, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way she hadn't been ready for. "So, what's the plan?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "How do we break this?" Felix gave a low chuckle. "First, we need to understand the crow. It's not like any curse. This one was made by something ancient and powerful. We'll need to track down the source, the one who cast the curse in the first place." "And who would that be?" Felix stopped, and with a serious look, he said, "A witch, but not just any witch. They say she's hidden deep in the city, where no light ever reaches. We find her, and we just might have a chance." Lena shivered at the idea of meeting a witch but didn't let it show. She had gotten into this mess and was determined to get out of it, no matter the cost. As they continued walking, Felix began explaining the rules of the curse. "The crow follows a strange pattern," he said. "Every wish you make strengthens it. It feeds on the desire, the hunger for more, and leaves a trail of misfortune behind." "Then why doesn't it hurt me directly?" Lena asked. "Ah," Felix answered, "that's the trick. It's clever. If it took from you, you'd be afraid to use it. But by harming others, it keeps you safe while drawing you deeper into its trap. Each time you make a wish, you're bound closer to it. That's why we have to move quickly." They arrived at a shabby, boarded-up shop on the edge of the city. Felix pushed open the door with a creak, revealing an abandoned store filled with dust and broken furniture. He motioned for Lena to follow him inside, and she reluctantly stepped through, the strange feather still clenched in her hand. "Why here?" she asked, looking around at the dusty shelves and broken glass scattered on the floor. "This was the last place the witch was seen," Felix replied. "Before she disappeared, she left traces here. If we're lucky, we might find a clue." They began searching, and Lena quickly discovered a cabinet in the corner filled with odd trinkets. There were jars filled with strange powders, twisted bones, and small vials of thick, dark liquid. She wasn't sure what any of it meant, but the whole place made her uneasy. Then, as she rummaged through a drawer, her fingers brushed against something cold. She pulled out a small, cracked mirror. The glass was cloudy, and a faint symbol was etched into its frame. The same symbol she had seen on the box that held the crow's feather. "Felix," she called, holding up the mirror. He took it from her, examining it closely. "This symbol," he murmured, "it's a mark of binding. It's possible the witch used this to connect with the crow. But how do we use it?" Lena asked, frustration starting to seep into her voice. "We talk to the crow," Felix replied, as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. Lena looked at him in shock. "Talk to the crow? That thing is cursed. It's not going to just tell us what it wants." Felix shrugged. "Maybe not, but we need to understand it better if we're going to break this curse. The crow won't answer to just anyone, but since you have the feather, it might be willing to speak with you." Hesitantly, Lena took the mirror and held it up, focusing on the feather in her other hand. She felt a strange pull, like something inside her was waking up, connecting her with something far away. The room grew colder, and she could sense the crow's presence in the shadows, even though it wasn't physically there. Then, faintly, she heard the same deep, rough voice she had heard before. "Another wish, Lena?" She shivered, feeling as though icy fingers were creeping down her back. "I don't want any more wishes," she replied, her voice steady. "I want to know who cursed you." There was silence, and then, slowly, the crow's voice answered. "The curse was born from betrayal, from broken promises and stolen dreams. I am bound by the wishes of others, by the hunger they cannot control. You too are bound, Lena." "But why hurt others?" she asked, her frustration boiling over. "Why cause so much suffering?" The voice laughed, a cruel, mocking sound, "Because that is the nature of desire. Nothing is free. Each wish has a price, and those who make them rarely care for the cost. Now, Lena, make a choice. Release me, and I shall leave you." Lena looked at Felix, who gave her a wary nod. "We don't know what it means by release," he said cautiously. "It could be a trap." She turned back to the mirror. "If I release you, will the people I hurt be free?" The voice grew soft, almost sad. "The damage is done, Lena, but you can be free of me if you let me go." For a long moment, she stood there, uncertain. Then, Felix reached out, touching her arm. "Don't trust it," he warned. "We don't know what it will do if you let it go. Could cause even more harm." Lena pulled back, feeling trapped by the choice before her. She turned away from the mirror, setting it back in the drawer. "I can't release you," she said firmly. "Not until I know what you are and where you came from." The crow's voice faded, and the room felt a bit warmer. But the feather in her hand was now heavier, almost pulsing with a dark energy. She tucked it into her coat, hoping she hadn't made a mistake. Felix gave her a thoughtful look. "You made the right call. We can't trust it. Not yet." He motioned for her to follow him back outside. Let's keep searching for more clues. There has to be something here that will lead us to the witch. As they stepped back into the cold night, Lena felt the weight of her choices hanging over her. The crow was watching, waiting, and she knew that every step they took brought them closer to something dangerous. But she couldn't turn back now. She was determined to find the truth, even if it meant facing whatever dark forces were behind this curse. And as they moved through the silent streets, she could almost feel the crow's eyes on her, hidden somewhere in the shadows, waiting for its next chance to strike. Part 3. The Witch's Secret. The streets felt colder than ever as Lena and Felix walked further into the heart of the city. The sky was dark, with only a sliver of moonlight breaking through the thick clouds above. Lena kept her hands close to her chest, clutching the cursed feather tightly. The weight of it felt heavy, reminding her that she was far from free. But she had chosen this path, and she was ready to see it through. "Where are we going now?" Lena asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "To an old part of town," Felix replied, glancing around as if watching for anyone who might be following them. "There's an abandoned building there, a place where strange things happen. If there's anyone who can help us find the witch, it's the people who gather there." Lena wasn't sure what he meant, but she nodded, following his lead. After a while, they reached a narrow street lined with empty buildings. Most of the windows were broken, and the walls were covered in peeling paint and graffiti. It looked like a place that time had forgotten, a hidden corner of the city where no one dared to live. They stopped in front of one building that looked worse than the rest. Its doors were tall and dark, with strange symbols carved into the wood. The windows were covered with thick, dark cloth, making it impossible to see inside. "Here we are," Felix said, pushing the door open slowly. "Stay close and don't say much. Just watch and listen." Lena took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and old wood. The room was dimly lit by candles, and shadowy figures stood around, speaking in low voices. She felt a chill run through her, and for a moment, she wished she could turn back. But she knew she had to be brave. One of the figures noticed them and walked over. He was an older man, with a long beard and piercing eyes that seemed to look right through her. "What brings you here?" he asked in a rough voice. Felix gave the man a small nod. "We're looking for information," he said, keeping his voice calm. "About the witch and the crow." The man's eyes narrowed, and he looked at Lena with a curious expression. "Ah, the crow. It's been a long time since someone spoke of that cursed creature." Lena hesitated, then held up the feather. I found this," she said softly, feeling strange admitting it. "I made wishes with it, but they came with a price. People around me got hurt." The man studied the feather, his face turning serious. "You don't know what you hold," he said. "This feather is no ordinary curse. It was created by a powerful witch, a woman who was betrayed long ago. They say she bound her spirit to this crow, so she could never be forgotten." Lena's mouth went dry. "But why does it grant wishes? And why does it hurt people?" Because the witch's spirit is filled with pain and anger, the man replied. Each wish gives her power, but that power comes from taking something in return. The more people are hurt, the stronger she becomes. She feeds on the misery. Lena felt a wave of guilt. Her wishes had seemed so small, so harmless. But now she understood that each one had added to the witch's power. Is there a way to stop it? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. The man nodded. There is a way, he said. You must go to the witch's resting place. Only there can the curse be broken. But where is that? Felix asked, leaning in closer. The man pointed to a dark corner of the room, where an old map was pinned to the wall. She was buried in the forest, deep where no one dares to go. It is a place marked by silence, where the air is thick and the sun never reaches. Lena shivered, but she forced herself to stay calm. Then we'll go there, she said firmly. If it's the only way to break the curse, I'll do it. The man looked at her with a sad expression. It won't be easy, he warned. The forest holds many secrets, and the witch's spirit is strong. She will not let you go without a fight. Lena felt a flicker of fear, but she pushed it down. She had started this journey, and she was determined to finish it. She looked at Felix, who gave her an encouraging nod. Let's go, she said, gripping the feather tightly. It's time to end this. The next day, Lena and Felix made their way to the forest. The trees grew close together, their branches twisting like dark, reaching hands. The deeper they walked, the quieter it became. Even the sound of birds and insects faded, leaving only the soft crunch of leaves under their feet. Lena felt the feather grow colder in her hand, as if it sensed the witch's presence nearby. She tried to keep her fear in check, but the silence weighed on her, making each step feel heavier than the last. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an old stone, covered in moss and vines. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, the same symbols she had seen before on the feather and in the old mirror. This, she realized, must be the witch's resting place. Felix took a step back, his face pale. Are you sure about this? He asked. There's still time to turn back. Lena shook her head. I have to end this. I can't let the crow hurt anyone else. She walked up to the stone and placed the feather on top. As soon as it touched the surface, a cold wind swept through the clearing, chilling her to the bone. The feather glowed with a dark light, and a faint voice echoed around them. Who dares disturb my rest? Lena forced herself to stand tall. I want to break the curse, she said, her voice steady. I know you were wronged, but this curse is hurting innocent people. It has to end. The voice laughed, cold and bitter. You think you can end it so easily? My pain, my anger. Those cannot be erased. This curse is my vengeance. But vengeance isn't worth the cost, Lena argued. Please, let it go. Set yourself free. The air grew thick, and Lena felt a strange pressure in her chest, as if the witch's spirit was testing her resolve. But she stood her ground, refusing to back down. After a long silence, the voice softened. If you wish to break the curse, then you must make a sacrifice, it whispered. A piece of your own spirit, given willingly. Lena's heart sank. She didn't fully understand what the witch meant, but she knew it would not be easy. If that's what it takes, she said quietly, then I'm willing. She placed her hand on the feather, and immediately, a surge of cold energy rushed through her. She felt memories slipping away. Small pieces of her life, her past, her dreams, all fading into darkness. It was painful, but she gritted her teeth and held on. After what felt like an eternity, the coldness faded. The feather lay on the stone, now dull and lifeless. The air in the clearing was still, and Lena felt a strange sense of emptiness, as if a part of her had been left behind. The voice spoke one last time, soft and weary. The curse is broken. You are free, as am I. With those final words, the presence vanished, leaving Lena and Felix alone in the quiet forest. They walked back in silence, both feeling the weight of what had just happened. Lena felt different, lighter somehow, but also changed. She couldn't explain it, but she knew that part of her had been given up that day, something she would never get back. As they reached the edge of the forest, Felix gave her a small smile. You did it, Lena. It's over. Lena managed a weak smile in return, though a part of her still felt heavy. Yes, she said, looking down at her empty hands. It's over. And with that, they left the forest, both carrying memories that would stay with them forever, and a sense that some battles left scars no one else could see. Part 4. Shadows of the Past. Lena and Felix returned to the city, both exhausted and silent. Breaking the curse should have felt like victory, but something still weighed on Lena's mind. It was as if the experience had left an emptiness that wouldn't easily go away. She'd sacrificed a piece of herself, a choice she knew she couldn't undo. Days passed, and Lena tried to settle back into her old life. But things were different now. The streets felt lonelier, the people more distant. She would often glance over her shoulder, expecting to see the crow or to hear its echoing caw, but it was gone, leaving only a hollow silence. She had escaped its curse, but a feeling lingered. A feeling that the curse might not be over completely. One evening, as she walked along the street markets alone, a familiar voice called out from behind her. Lena! She turned to see Felix rushing towards her. His usual confident grin faded. Felix, Lena said, surprised. She hadn't seen him since they left the forest. What brings you here? He looked over his shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone else was around. I had to see you. Something strange is going on. Remember the people in that dark room, the ones we met before going to the forest? Lena nodded, recalling the eerie figures and the whispers about the crow and the curse. Well, they've been looking for you, Felix continued, lowering his voice. They think you still hold part of the curse. Lena's eyes widened. What do you mean? I sacrificed a piece of myself to end it. The witch's spirit left. I felt it, Felix nodded, but his face showed doubt. That's what we thought, but people are saying strange things. It's like the curse left something behind in the city. Some people have started experiencing misfortune, sickness, accidents, lost fortunes, all since we returned from the forest. They think you might still be linked to it somehow. A chill crept up Lena's spine. She remembered the words of the witch, "You are free, as am I." Had the curse somehow found a way to survive through her? Why would it stay with me? Lena whispered. I did everything I could to set it free. I don't know, Felix replied, his face tense. But we need answers. We can't let this go on. There has to be someone who knows more. Lena bit her lip, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Then we find them. If there's even a chance the curse is still alive, I'll do whatever it takes to put it to rest. Felix nodded, his face resolute. I know of a place where we might find answers. It's risky, but I don't think we have a choice. The next day, they traveled to an old, crumbling mansion on the edge of the city. It was said to be a place for those who dealt in secrets, a gathering ground for people who knew about curses and the supernatural. As they entered, Lena felt a strange sense of dread. The halls were dark, lined with dusty portraits, and the air was thick with the smell of age and mystery. They approached a room at the end of the hallway, where an elderly woman sat at a table covered in strange trinkets. She had a stern, wise expression, her gaze piercing as if she could see right through them. What brings you here, strangers? She asked in a low, measured voice. We're seeking answers about a curse, Felix explained, glancing at Lena for support. Lena stepped forward, holding up the feather she still kept with her. I made wishes with this feather, and each wish came with a cost. I broke the curse, but now people are saying that the curse has left something behind, like it hasn't fully gone. The woman's gaze shifted to the feather, and her eyes narrowed. You meddled with dark forces, she said, her tone warning, the kind that don't let go so easily. The spirit you dealt with may be gone, but the power it carried remains within you. Lena's heart sank. So I'm still cursed? Not cursed, the woman replied, but connected. The witch's spirit used you as a vessel to spread her pain, her anger. When you broke the curse, a piece of her stayed behind. You absorbed part of it, and now it lives within you. Lena's eyes widened in shock. What does that mean? Am I a danger to others? The woman studied her, then nodded slowly. In a way, yes. You carry the remnants of the curse, a shadow of the witch's power. It can affect those around you, bringing misfortune to anyone who gets too close. Lena felt a pit of guilt growing inside her. Then how do I stop it? How do I get rid of this shadow? The woman looked thoughtful. To remove it, you must confront the spirit once more. You must reach the place where the curse was first created, and release the remaining power there. Where is that place? Felix asked, his voice edged with concern. The woman looked at them with a grave expression. In a forgotten village, far from here. The village was lost to time, its name erased from maps. But if you go there, you might find a way to end this for good. Lena nodded, feeling both afraid and determined. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to stop now. "Thank you," she said quietly. "We'll find this place." The woman gave her a final warning look. "Be careful, child. Once you go to that village, you may find things far worse than the crow's curse." As they left the mansion, Felix turned to Lena. "Are you sure about this? It sounds dangerous." Lena took a deep breath, her grip tightening on the feather. "I don't have a choice, Felix. This shadow, this leftover curse, it's hurting innocent people. I can't live with that." Felix looked at her, then nodded. "Then I'm with you. We'll go to the village together." The journey to the forgotten village was long and exhausting. They traveled through forests and crossed rivers, moving deeper into unknown territory. With each mile, Lena felt the presence of the curse growing stronger, as if it were pulling her towards something dark and hidden. Finally, after days of traveling, they reached the village. It was silent and empty, the buildings crumbling with age. Vines and weeds had taken over the streets, and a thick fog hung over the place, making it feel ghostly and surreal. "This place, it feels haunted," Felix muttered, glancing around nervously. Lena felt it too. The air was heavy, thick with an eerie energy that made her skin tingle. She looked around, searching for any sign of where the curse might be hiding. In the center of the village, they found a well old and cracked. Strange symbols were carved into its stone, symbols that matched the ones she had seen on the feather and the stone in the forest. "This must be it," Lena said, approaching the well. She felt a pull, as if the shadows within her were being drawn to this place. As she stepped closer, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and a dark mist began to rise from the well. She felt a wave of fear but forced herself to stay calm. She had to face this. She couldn't let the curse continue to hurt others. Holding the feather above the well, she closed her eyes and spoke softly, her voice filled with determination. "I release you. I let go of this curse, this shadow. Return to where you came from and leave the living in peace." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the dark mist swirled around her, wrapping itself around her body. She felt a cold, hollow ache in her chest, as if the very life was being pulled from her. But she didn't resist. She let it take everything, every last trace of the curse, until finally, the mist faded, disappearing back into the well. Lena staggered back, feeling weak but free. Felix caught her before she could fall. "It's over," he said, his voice filled with relief. Lena looked down at the feather, which was now nothing more than an ordinary feather, its glow gone. The curse was gone, truly gone. But as they left the village, she couldn't shake the feeling that some part of her had changed forever, that the shadows would always be a part of her, even if only in memory. Part 5. The Final Debt. Lena and Felix left the forgotten village, feeling lighter but drained. The silence between them grew, both wrapped in their own thoughts, as they made their way back to the city. The journey home felt longer, and each step brought memories of the crow, the wishes, the costs, and the curse that had bound them all together. By the time they reached the city, life around them continued as if nothing had changed. But Lena felt as if she had left a part of herself back in that village, trapped in the well. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, a quiet emptiness she hadn't expected. The weight of what she'd lost lingered, a feeling of loss and mystery. Felix noticed her silence and tried to break it. "You did something no one else could," he said gently. "Not many would give up as much as you did to stop that curse." Lena nodded, but she didn't feel like a hero. "It's strange. I should feel happy, like I'm free. But instead, I just feel tired, like there's still something unfinished." She paused, looking at Felix. Do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" Felix sighed, looking away for a moment before responding. "I think you will, but it might take time. You've been through something nobody else would understand. Not even me." They parted ways at the edge of the city, agreeing to stay in touch but sensing that they each needed time alone to process everything. Lena tried to go back to her old life, hoping the feeling would fade over time. She returned to the familiar streets and her small apartment, hoping to find peace in routine. Days turned to weeks, and life began to fall back into its usual rhythm. But every so often, Lena would hear a distant caw, like the echo of a memory, or feel a faint chill. She'd glance over her shoulder, expecting to see the crow, even though she knew it was gone. It was as if some piece of the curse, or perhaps of herself, had never fully left. Then one evening, as Lena was closing her window, a faint scratching sound came from behind her. She turned slowly, her heart still as she stared at the figure perched on the windowsill. A small black crow, not the same as the one she'd freed, but somehow familiar. Its eyes glittered with an intelligence she couldn't ignore. "Back again," she whispered, unsure if she was talking to herself or the crow. The crow tilted its head, its gaze never leaving hers. She watched it carefully, wondering if it was merely a coincidence or if something deeper was at play. As she reached out a cautious hand, the crow cawed softly, a sound that sent a strange calm through her. Without fully understanding why, Lena spoke. "If you're here to bring trouble, I don't have anything left to give." The crow blinked slowly and then, to her surprise, fluttered off the windowsill, leaving her alone in the quiet room. Lena watched it disappear into the night, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. The encounter had felt like a farewell, as if the crow had come to acknowledge the end of something. A final chapter closing. The next morning, Lena found a small feather lying on the windowsill where the crow had perched. She picked it up, examining its soft, dark texture. It was only a feather, simple and unremarkable, but she slipped it into her pocket as a reminder of everything she'd been through. As weeks turned into months, the memory of the crow and the curse became something distant, a story she remembered more than an experience she had lived. She worked hard to rebuild her life, finding peace in the ordinary moments. Sunlight on her face, the laughter of children on the streets, and the sound of rain on her windows. Felix visited her occasionally, and they would talk for hours, sometimes about the curse, sometimes about life, and sometimes about nothing at all. They had shared something that had changed them both, but they also knew they had to move on. One evening, as they sat by the riverbank, Felix spoke up. "Do you think you'll ever make a wish again?" Lena looked out over the water, the memories washing over her, but with a warmth that hadn't been there before. She smiled, a small, bittersweet smile. I don't need to. I've learned to live with what I have, and I think that's enough." Felix grinned. "It's funny, isn't it? A crow, a curse, and all those wishes. And in the end, all we wanted was what we had all along." Lena nodded, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't felt before. She took the feather from her pocket, holding it up to the fading light. It was just a feather, after all, simple, fragile, yet a powerful reminder of the price of wishes and the strength found in letting go. With a quiet laugh, Lena released the feather, watching it drift away on the gentle breeze. The weight of the curse, the choices, and the fears seemed to lift with it, leaving her feeling, at last, truly free. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena and Felix walked back to the city together, no longer haunted by shadows or wishes, but holding on to the quiet strength of all they had overcome. Part 6. New Beginnings. Months passed, and Lena's life found a peaceful, steady rhythm. The experiences with the cursed crow became memories she could finally live with, like scars that had healed. She continued her small routines, each day building her life anew. She still crossed paths with Felix from time to time, but there was an unspoken understanding between them now. They had come through the darkness and no longer needed to dwell in it. One bright spring morning, Lena was heading through the city market, breathing in the sense of fresh bread and flowers, when she saw a familiar face. An old woman, her eyes sharp and her frame hunched with age. The same woman she had met the night she took the crow. "Lena," the woman greeted her, as if they'd spoken just yesterday. Her voice was rough yet gentle, like dry leaves on a windy day. "You look well. Changed, but well." Lena felt a flutter of surprise. She hadn't expected to see the woman again, and yet it seemed oddly fitting. "I didn't think I'd see you again," Lena replied, cautiously curious. The woman nodded, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "Sometimes, people come into our lives to teach us what we need to learn. I was here when you needed the crow, and I'm here now that you don't." Lena stared at her, trying to find the right words. "Why did you give me that crow? You knew what it would do, didn't you?" The woman's gaze softened. "I gave you the crow because you needed to understand something. You had desires and dreams that wouldn't let you rest. And sometimes we need to go through the darkness to understand what truly matters." Lena listened, her heart calm but her thoughts racing. She had indeed learned a lot, but the journey had been far from easy. "What happens to it now?" she asked. The woman chuckled. a sound filled with both warmth and mystery. The crow is where it should be, and its curse is no longer something you need to worry about. That chapter is closed. Relief washed over Lena, but a small, nagging question remained. Will it go to someone else? Will someone else face what I did? The woman tilted her head thoughtfully. The crow seeks out those who need to learn, as it did with you. But remember, not everyone finds themselves bound by curses. Some people hold their wishes loosely, while others cling to them until they cut. With that, the woman reached into her cloak and held out something small and simple. A wooden amulet, carved in the shape of a feather. For you, Lena, as a reminder. Lena took the amulet, feeling the rough, warm wood between her fingers. Thank you, she whispered, unsure what else to say. The woman nodded, her face softening. You've earned it. And remember, not every wish requires a crow. Sometimes, all we need to do is listen to our hearts. As Lena looked up, ready to ask more, she found herself alone in the crowd. The woman had disappeared, leaving only the faint echo of her words. Lena turned the amulet over in her hand, feeling a warmth spread through her. A quiet strength she hadn't known before. She slipped the amulet around her neck and continued through the market, feeling, for the first time, truly at peace. That evening, Lena met with Felix by the riverbank, a place they had come to think of as their meeting spot. She shared the story of the woman and the amulet, and as they sat watching the water ripple under the setting sun, Lena realized something. She was no longer bound by her past. With a smile, she looked at Felix. So what next? Without a curse or a crow? Felix laughed, a free, easy laugh that echoed through the quiet air. Whatever we want, Lena. We've earned the right to live as we please. No tricks, no curses. They stayed by the river until the stars filled the sky, their laughter mingling with the night air, knowing that while they had walked through shadows, they had emerged on the other side, stronger, wiser, and finally free. And as they parted ways under the starlit sky, Lena felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with magic or wishes. It was the quiet strength of knowing she could face anything, even without a wishing crow by her side. The crow's lessons would stay with her, but she was ready to live her life anew, free from curses and full of her own dreams.